Okay, hello and welcome everyone to our 2021 Innovation Tour. Welcome back for those that have joined us for the previous sessions this month. My name is Marty Trembath. I'm a Business Development Manager at Rizing. I'm here to introduce our topic for today, which is Enterprise Project and Portfolio Management. It's to be presented by John Wilson, who by now you're quite familiar with. He's responsible for the go-to-market strategy for SAP Digital Supply Chain within Australia and New Zealand. And also Mustafa Akar from Rizing. He's a principal consultant with more than 15 years experience in SAP portfolio and project management and project systems. Similar to the usual format, the presentation will go for generally about an hour with room for some questions at the end. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go along, and if we can get them answered as we go, we'll do that as well. So the Innovation Tour is brought to you by SAP and Rizing. It's done throughout August, and we have 8 sessions full of great intelligent asset management content every Tuesday and every Thursday. We just jump to the next slide. You can see that we're just past halfway now through our sessions. We've had some really great interaction and really great sessions, and we're keen for another great one today. The first 4 sessions, as they've been completed, have been recorded, and people that registered for those sessions have had the replay video issued out to them if they weren't able to get to the session. So look out for that in your inbox. Alternatively, they'll be available via the Rizing website. So as I said today, we will be going through enterprise portfolio and project management. Within our agenda, we have a discussion on the current business challenges that we see and what the SAP solution portfolio provides within EPPM, as we call it. Some of the SAP solution innovations that we're currently seeing and are being looked into by both Rizing and SAP. Some examples of some successful customer stories from both SAP and Rizing, as well as some of the initiatives that we're working on, and as I said, we'll do some Q&A at the end and in between. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Mustafa, who'll get us started. Thanks, Mustafa.
Thanks, Marty. Okay, let's start today's session with looking at the challenges that are faced by stakeholders in project organizations. There are many different stakeholders involved in a portfolio project lifecycle. These stakeholders might involve people from the board level directors giving the strategic direction to the portfolio, all the way to the procurement officers, project managers, and project team members. Obviously, the most important actors here are project managers and program managers, who are actually looking after the successful completion of these projects. In terms of these stakeholders and the challenges they are facing in the absence of a central component to manage the projects, they usually suffer from a lack of a governance process that is applied across all the projects in the organizations. Especially asset-heavy industries, when they are doing risk-based investment planning, they require lots of data that are coming from their asset management system that will be providing input to the project management system, and this risk-based investment planning is a challenge. When these people use separate systems, they usually at the end of the annual cycle, they might struggle to find out what were the initial targets and how those initial targets were set up, as opposed to where they ended up executing these projects in the absence of an integrated system. If they are having inconsistent project information coming from these separate systems, this will cause different data sources, and the source of truth will not be easily identified. And then there will be discussions to find out what version is the right version in terms of project status. Again, in the absence of one complete system, there would be no consolidated view, which would make monitoring of the projects really hard. in the absence of a structured planning environment, it will be hard for them to actually support their planning and the numbers with the supporting evidence about how those numbers were achieved. And any information, if the system is not integrated and immediate, any information that is reported is likely to be outdated. So all these challenges will actually make it difficult for them to handle project lifecycle. And also for the decision makers, it will be difficult for them to actually get to the right decisions in the absence of reliable data. So if we were to have a central platform for different stakeholders ranging from the customers of the organization, and these could be internal customers like different departments within the organization, or external third-party customers, going through logistics and finance departments, they have a stake in the game. Project managers and program managers are the main stakeholders there, looking after project risks, approvals, and execution. And obviously project team members who are helping with the execution. All these stakeholders are benefiting from one central platform. And this platform should have the three main principles. First of all, it should be immediate. It should be providing the single source of truth, and it should provide instant access for the users when they need the data. Secondly, it should be integrated, because projects are the most collaborative activities that are happening in the organization. It should actually allow people to connect with each other and to connect to the data that they are looking at. And these could be internal and external project participants. It also includes vendors and customers of the organization. And this platform should be integrated to the business functions of the organization. And finally, the system should be interactive. If you are after answers, you should be able to get those answers in real time using the project analytics. And also the user interfaces that these stakeholders are using should be really easy to consume and should be really targeted based on their roles. If you look at the end-to-end process in terms of portfolio and project management, we start with the strategic management. Strategic management for the organization starts with the vision and mission, but these are defined as corporate goals. The corporate goals are achieved through strategic initiatives that are set by the board, and usually there is high-level budgeting planned on these on a much longer term than the project execution lifecycle. So we are talking about maybe 2 to 10 or 15-year dimension here. Next, we have those strategic initiatives bringing out project proposals. These project proposals are assessed through different criteria. Risk assessment is one of the main ones. Corporate goals alignment, whether organization actually have enough budget to execute those project proposals. All these questions are used in the ranking of those project proposals. Finally, the ones that need to go ahead or that are decided to go ahead get to the project planning phase. In the planning phase, you structure the project based on your phases. Usually, the organization needs to use templated project structures here. They schedule tasks and activities and manage milestones. In the procurement, they are looking at ensuring there are internal resources available, but if they need to use external resources, they can start that process. But there's also the material procurement requirement, especially if you are building an asset. In the execution level, we have approvals for each phase, accounting integration, logistics integration, and milestone management as we go through the life cycle. Finally, in the monitoring step, we have progress tracking, budget availability control on a regular basis, and plan actual comparison. So if we just dive into the project proposal management in a bit more detail, Project proposals are project requests that identify the benefits and the goals of that proposal. They also should clearly identify what value this proposal will bring to the organization and what we are trying to achieve. The estimates that are required on these project proposals are usually at a high level. They include financials and capacity requirements for the execution of the proposal. Once these proposals are created with all the necessary information, they are governed through a stage gate process. As they go through stages and get approved, they might eventually become projects themselves. Questionnaires are used for risk, value, and technical feasibility to assess each of the proposal, and the results of the questionnaires are compared through scoring methods, and this whole method is called prioritization of the project. One project might be really important in terms of answering risks, but it might be technically not feasible. So those kind of decisions are involved in that scoring method to rank and prioritize the project proposals. In terms of project planning and scheduling, at this stage, the detailed WBS structure is defined on the project. Phases are clearly defined, milestones are clearly defined, and the project has a timeline with all the decision gates established. The tasks are defined and tasks are assigned to responsible people or parties. It might be, there might be a group of people working on a certain task, or it might be just an individual. Project plan versions are created. Usually we start with high-level plans, and as we get closer to the execution, we have really detailed task and material planning. And obviously, integration with accounting and project controlling starts to take place. In the project cost planning and forecasting stage, again here, you could be doing really detailed project planning as you get closer to the execution. And at that level, you will need to have access to the latest resource and material prices to make sure that your financial plan is accurate. Once those financial plans are created and baselined, they are used for ongoing forecasting of the project, because as we have these financial plans and our targeted completion percentages of the project, we can then calculate the earned value, we can then calculate the estimated completion, and whether we are going on track or not. Procurement stage and execution stage involves an important activity called risk, issue, and change management. So each project has a risk register. In the risk register, we capture the risks specific to that project execution, and we then decide what sort of response we are going to provide to those risks. It could be just watch for a while, or it could be this is an important risk and it should be mitigated. So those mitigation activities can be planned through risk register and assigned to individuals. Similarly, if issues captured and they become serious issues and they need to be involved in the variation process, then change management is applied and change requests are created and taken through an approval process. So, and then at the end, we might need to update our project cost plan. For the monitoring of project costs and the progress, we need the analytics coming from financials in real time. Obviously, the integration with procurement, finance, and HR is really important here to be able to see the latest and also to be able to calculate the earned value in the project. Finally, all this data that's collected at the project level needs to be rolled up to the portfolio level so that we can look at whether portfolio is actually targeting the initial goals that were set up at the start of the year, and whether the projects are going on track. If multiple projects are having financial budget issues, then it might be a portfolio level decision to actually, slow some of them down, or actually find more funding to continue with the delivery of the portfolio. Aligning portfolio budget to the corporate strategy and goals is only achieved when you have access to all these project level data rolled up at a portfolio level. If we were to look at typical portfolio and project structure in the project organization, we have 3 layers. On the top level, we have the portfolio hierarchy. The hierarchy would be cut in different ways. It could be from the viewpoint of the organizational split, like different departments in the organization. If the organization is operating in multiple regions, that would be a hierarchy typically representing those regions. And it could be there could be an operational hierarchy based on the different types of work the organization is doing. In asset-heavy industries, there's always a maintenance work, and there's always establishment of new assets or replacing of the aging assets. There can be shutdown maintenance type of projects. So all of these are the operational split of the portfolios, and they are defined as buckets. Onto these buckets then, we assign our project proposals. The project proposals can be grouped into program initiatives. So multiple project proposals can be combined into one program, and that program might be targeting a strategic goal. These project proposals go through the prioritization process, and finally, they actually result in operational projects. In the operational project level, we are dealing now with a WBS structure that actually represent phases. And then under those phases, we have individual tasks and the resources assigned to them. We are getting all the accounting and logistics communication happening through here. We have the project schedule maintained and resource and change management done through operational projects. Now I'll hand over to John to take us through the SAP solution portfolio.
Just before we do that, Mustafa, I do have a question in the chat here, and it's a good one. During the strategy phase, how can we integrate market data with SAP EPPM to derive the estimation? Is it open integration, and how's that achieved?
So in PPM, there are different ways of introducing data. And actually, it's one of the innovations that we might mention later in the session, that there are ways to actually get this data uploaded into system quickly. It depends on what sort of data we are actually integrating into the portfolio. It could be something, from the market. We might need to include some targets into our portfolio, and that can be a direct upload, or we might need to actually do some data transform activities before consuming that data.
Great, thank you, and we'll cover that in the innovations part as well. Perfect.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you so much for that introduction, Mustafa, and taking us through, some of the challenges and obviously the business process. I want to switch gear a little bit and just look at I guess, how does SAP address some of this problem, and the business process that Mustafa has described. And what's clear, right, when we look at the end-to-end business process is there are a number of different capabilities that are needed, right? We need to be able to capture, those ideas, that might be initiatives that that we might eventually become projects. We need to manage all of those. We need to plan. We need to understand our resources, and of course, when we get into execution, we need to be able to, integrate with procurement and with human resources. We need to be able to collaborate with the other parties maybe that are involved in delivering those projects. And of course, we need analytics along the way to understand, hey, where are we going? How are we tracking? Is everything under control. So lots of different capabilities, and it's a challenge, obviously, to bring all of these together into one place. And so typically we see a number of different tools being used for different purposes. A dedicated issue management tool, and a dedicated scheduling tool, and dedicated risk tool, and separate analytics environment. And so the challenge for SAP is really to try and bring all of these capabilities together and have them all working alongside each other. So to do that, really what we're trying to do actually is to consolidate some of the different capabilities that we've had in the past under this banner of enterprise portfolio and project management. And so there are a number of elements that make this up, and we're going to talk about each of these in turn. But I guess the starting point for a lot of these projects is actually the initial idea. And so we have a capability that we call innovation management that supports the capture of ideas and the structuring of ideas and collaboration around ideas, so that you can actually have a rich pool of potential projects, I guess, that you might work from. And then you bring that into the kind of the portfolio, and project management space, where those ideas become items, and as Mustafa mentioned, you group them up into buckets, and you maybe put some more detailed estimates there, and do some more questionnaires and things like that. And in the past we had kind of portfolio and project management really largely focused on internal projects. So they could be internal capital projects, but they could be internal IT projects or R&D projects. And then we had a third capability that we called commercial project management that was really focused around external projects. So if you were providing project-based services to your customers, and we see this actually in a number of different industries, even in industries like utilities and oil and gas and mining, where your core operations obviously are internal, but many of those organizations also have a consulting arm where you take some of that specialist knowledge and you apply it for the benefit of others. And so commercial project management fits very well into that space. It also fits well into the professional services sort of space as well. And the challenge we had, right, is in that commercial project management space, some of the capabilities we had there around being able to manage issues and risks and things like that were capabilities that actually we needed for internal projects as well. So what we've done with this portfolio actually is to consolidate those two together. So when we talk about enterprise portfolio and project management, we're actually talking about the combination of portfolio and project management and commercial project management. And that consolidation really is taking place both from a development point of view, but also actually from a licensing point of view as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Underpinning all of this, of course, is our ERP. And whether it be S/4HANA or whether it be our ECC ERP, that core, project accounting, project logistics, your resources and everything like that still forms the foundation. So that integration, back into procurement, that integration back into finance really does come through that core project systems capability, or project accounting, project logistics that we call it in S4. So really the goal here with this, this complete portfolio is to be able to cater for all different types of projects, whether they're R&D projects, IT projects, capital projects, and to support that life cycle all the way from idea through to execution. Of course, not everybody does everything in SAP, and we realize that that there are specialist tools that are used and in the project space, tools like Primavera or Project are used very commonly. And there's a need to connect out to those. And we'll talk more about that, particularly in the work that Rizing are doing around how we can support those sorts of connections as well. So just, that idea of combining, those multiple capabilities that I was talking about, so portfolio and project management and commercial project management, combining those under the banner of enterprise portfolio and project management. So this has already happened, both from a development point of view and from a commercial point of view. And then linking that then back to the core capabilities around project systems that you have inside the ERP. So really, you know, the end-to-end process for SAP combines those two offers together. And, you know, there are a number of different ways that you can deploy this, right? So, you know, the traditional, you know, classic sort of ERP, if you're using an ECC environment today, so you have your ECC environment there in blue. You know, you may be using some of the project systems capability there to, you know, to create projects and structure, you know, work breakdown structures, for example. And then you can layer, you know, enterprise portfolio and project management on top of that, right, as an add-on. And then, you know, if you want to take advantage of some of the cloud-based capabilities that we'll talk about in a second around innovation management and the project intelligence network, then you can connect that in, you know, into that on-premise environment, you know, through the cloud connector. Of course, if you have moved to S4 or you plan to move to S4, the architecture looks very similar. So that core project systems capability is still there in S4, covered under that S/4HANA license. And then you can layer enterprise portfolio and project management on top of that, and again, connect it up to the cloud if you want to. Of course, if your preference is to move into the cloud, actually with the core ERP, then we're able to support that, either the private cloud edition or the extended edition. We're able to do that. So, you know, if you're looking, for example, at Rise with SAP, then, you know, this kind of cloud approach is probably what you're looking towards. But again, from an architectural point of view, very, very similar to on-premise, except now this is managed and maintained by SAP. And then if you're in the public cloud, so using the Essentials edition of S/4HANA, there are capabilities here as well, but these are actually a little bit different to the capabilities that are available on-premise or in the private cloud. So there is specific functionality that's been built in the public cloud to support research and development, to support professional services. And that is slightly different to the functionality that's available in enterprise portfolio and project management on-premise. So really, you know, that move into the public cloud in this space makes sense if you're in certain industries, but probably from a core asset management space, capital projects point of view, that's really not what that public cloud solution is targeted towards today. And we are doing some more work around, you know, this idea of a project cloud, you know, so actually creating additional portfolio and project management capabilities in the cloud, so that rather than having to, you know, deploy that on premise, you have the option to deploy that in the cloud. It won't be the complete functionality, and it's still currently in development, not released just yet. But we are doing some work in that space as well to try and create another pathway, you know, for adoption, to make it easier to expand and use some of this functionality in the future. So a few different pathways. You know, this can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but you know, the reality is, you know, if we have a conversation, understand what your strategy is in relation to your core ERP, then absolutely there is an option that will be right for you. Just one other point.
To interrupt, we do have one more question, and it relates to what fits where, so I might just ask you to go back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe back one more slide, if that's okay. The question is, where does investment management fit for capital projects in S/4HANA?
Yeah, so investment management, you know, fits within the kind of the financial, and I obviously haven't shown every component of S/4HANA here as well. So, so investment management, you know, is available in S4 and in ECC, of course. And it sits alongside, right? So you're able to use investment management to control, you know, the allocation of budgets, you know, to projects as well. portfolio and project management actually supports some of that as well. So typically there's a question around, what's the appropriate tool to use here? So if you need the kind of the hard financial controls that basically say, hey, once we've spent to the budget and we want to stop, then investment management offers that. If it's more about tracking and understanding, hey, what budget's been allocated and how we're tracking in terms of actuals, then actually portfolio and project management can offer that as well. So typically there's a little bit of deeper discussion that we need to go into around what functionality to utilize and for what purpose. But yeah, investment management certainly fits in this space as well.
One thing to add there, in my experience with the clients that I have interacted with, once PPM is established and that link with the budget allocation down to the PPM item and PS project is established, I haven't seen the need to actually implement investment management on top of that. But if the organization already has a culture of using IM with PS, and if we are bringing PPM into the picture, then it might make sense to actually looking to keep that into the picture.
Yeah, that's consistent with my experience as well, Mustafa, that that typically if you've got the visibility and you've got the ability to alert, for example, when you're nearing sort of budget amounts and things like that, in many cases that's actually sufficient, and investment management isn't needed to deliver that.
Great, thank you.
Right, awesome. Keep those questions coming, everyone. So yeah, just one other point to make. So prior to to S/4HANA 1709, so the 2017 release of S/4HANA. So with ECC and the early releases of S/4HANA, all of this kind of enterprise portfolio and project management functionality was available as an add-on. So you actually had some technical work that you needed to do to actually deploy that into your ECC or your S/4HANA environment. As of that 2017 release, so up to and including 2020 and beyond, that functionality is now part of S/4HANA, right? So if in your S/4HANA environment, that portfolio and project management, commercial project management functionality is technically deployed. So there's no technical work that needs to be done. It is separately licensed, so it's in the box. But if you want to take advantage of it, obviously it is separately licensed. But at least you don't have to do the technical work, and then when you're updating your system, all of those components are being updated as well at the same time. So a bit of a change in the delivery model there. So just drilling a little bit into more detail in each of the areas. So innovation management. So really this is a solution for capturing ideas, expanding on ideas, and collaborating around ideas. So having a central repository for doing that. This is actually available both on-premise and in the cloud. If anyone's used the SAP Continuous Influence portal, where you can actually go and register ideas on how SAP should improve our software, that's actually built using SAP Innovation Management. So, and I've put the link there actually to the cloud enterprise portfolio and project management influence initiative that's currently open and collecting ideas, and we'd love you to give us your feedback. But yeah, we use innovation management for exactly that. So you can go and register an idea, other people can come and vote, so they can see all of the ideas that have been registered. They can vote for the ones that they believe are the most important. Our development teams then go and review that, and then they prioritize and change the status, and then eventually this is what gets delivered in the updates actually that come out. So every year in the S/4HANA updates, there's usually a package of updates that is related to continuous influence. And we have a couple of different models. We have some that are run as projects, so they have a defined timeline where you can open up, get ideas, and you might be open for a few months, gather those ideas, and then rank them, vote on them, select them. And then we have some that are constantly running, so open for an idea to be submitted at any point. And so, yeah, so if you haven't used that portal, please go and have a look. There are lots of great initiatives, not just in this area, but across the entire SAP portfolio. And it's a great example of how you can use innovation management to collect, evaluate, and select those ideas. Just to show you a little bit what that can look like, right? So this idea that you can run campaigns around, collecting ideas for a certain purpose. That putting an idea in can be as simple as a title, a description, maybe some attachments, and then even the ability to kind of collaborate and drag and bring post-its and other content, and use that to flesh out the idea through this concept of like an idea wall, so a mood board for your project ideas, as it were. So then, once you've got your idea, then you're going to, rank and select, and you're going to bring a subset of those ideas forward as, potential projects, right? And so now you need to start doing some of that work around, maybe some of the financial planning, some of the resource planning. You're going to align those ideas back to that corporate strategy that Mustafa talked about. You might start looking at some different phases, some work packages, possibly not all the way down to a detailed, project schedule, but at least at a high level. What are the key phases? What are the dates going to be? What types of resources am I going to need? And what might the high level costs be? And then you might start looking at, some of the, the procurement activities, the production activities that might be linked in to, to deliver a project like this. And typically what you'll do is you'll go through a number of stage gates, right? Quality gates, where you're collecting information, and then you're reviewing and checking for completeness, and then actually ranking and evaluating again. And so typically this lines up with a corporate, budgetary cycle where you might go through, a number of different phases, and then ultimately select the projects that are going to go through into execution. And by the time you get to that execution point of view, you've got a pretty detailed view of exactly the schedule, exactly the resources, the costs, and everything like that. And you can pull the trigger and actually then start executing. So just a couple of examples here, being able to create portfolio items. So these items could come from a solution like innovation management as an idea, and we convert that across, or they could be entered directly as an item. And you've got some flexibility here around the way you configure this, what information you need, what's required and what isn't. And then once you go from the item into the project, obviously you start gathering more information. You can see up the top there, this idea of kind of the different, phases. So, from a proposal submitted through to an investment committee review, through to a go, no-go decision, through to project planning, detailed engineering, procurement. And that's, again, is flexible. You can define the different phases that you need to go through. And the different gates, and that can be different for different types of projects, right? So for minor capital works, it might be a pretty simple sort of set of phases that you go through. For a major, a capital program, there may be many more gates that you have to go through, many more reviews you need to do. And then, of course, when you get actually into the detailed project planning, and for those who are familiar with sort of project systems, you can kind of see the parallels here in terms of having my project, having my work breakdown structure, having my network activities, and all of the detail that rolls up then back into that portfolio item. From a commercial project management, so the lens here with commercial project management was slightly different in that you were looking external, right? These are projects that I'm going to be delivering to a customer. So I need to understand, what are those key milestones? What are those key KPIs? What are we going to be billing on? How far are we in terms of completing? What issues and changes and risks are going on? And of course, these things aren't unique to commercial projects, but they were definitely very prevalent in that space, right? That you monitor that much more carefully. And so some of the capabilities here, this idea that we have a project workspace where I can see all the different projects and how we're tracking at a very high level, cost plan versus actual and estimate to complete, all of that. And then I can navigate from there into more detail. And I can use tools like Excel for cost and revenue planning, and projections and things like that. So capturing forecast information here back into the solution as well. And then, of course, looking at all the different activities and understanding, hey, are we on track? Are we behind schedule, ahead of schedule? So being able to review all of those and monitor, the project process. And one of the other things that commercial project management brought was this idea to central issues and change register, across your projects as well, so we can understand all of the issues and changes that are occurring, the impacts that they're going to have, and the status of all of those as well. So bringing your schedule information, bringing your financial information, bringing your procurement information, also bringing your issue and change information all into a common platform. And then, of course, a lot of this information isn't just dealt with internally within your organization. It actually is used and needs to be communicated across organizations. Most of these capital projects are not delivered internally, or certainly not exclusively internally. You have multiple stakeholders, and in the case of some projects, that that number could run into the tens and sometimes even the hundreds of stakeholders in particularly large projects. So that the ability to expose some of this data out through a network to be able to manage cross-organizational processes. So whether it's just exchanging data around the project schedule or around some of those project issues, tracking execution of some of those, or even being able to manage business processes like inspections and sign-offs. And there's a whole lot of challenges here in this space, and we'll talk a little bit later about the kind of digital engineering, digitized infrastructure work that we're doing with the public sector team here in Australia. But having common standards, having common approaches, common processes is a real challenge in this space, and it's an area that SAP is really focused on, and we are trying to help industry to enable going beyond maybe just the sharing of documents to a much more structured, much more standardized approach to cross-organizational collaboration.
We do have another question, John. I think the answer's within this slide, and it's again about integration down to the into your project for estimation planning purposes. The question is 3D and 4D integration available via BIM, for example, and is it able to pass that information down for the change in scope and the estimation for planning purposes? Is that done within the Project Intelligence Network?
Yeah, so that support for like the different BIM standards is something that we're building into tools like the Project Intelligence Network. So being able to consume that standardized data and drive that through into processes like estimation and planning. So yes, absolutely. We don't have all of those capabilities, baked into the software today, and so we are working with partners in this space as well, who provide, flexibility to ingest, different formats. We have a partnership with Siemens as well, who do quite a bit of work in this space as well. And actually, one of the the tenets of the relationship with Siemens is around the project space and integrating data together with them as well. So yes, so there is some capability in the SAP software, and we're also partnering as well to extend that further.
Cool, thank you.
No worries. So yeah, so within that kind of collaborative sort of space, the idea that I can take the schedule maybe that we've put together and be able to share that with others, so others can see what's being planned. They can provide feedback. Maybe we might give them authorization even to be able to edit that schedule. that we can jointly work on tasks and issues, and again, sharing the status, sharing updates, sharing the dates between organizations. And also some of the financial elements here as well. So being able to see, the financial aspects related to our projects. Again, all with appropriate sort of authorization controls. So, not just going to give this to everyone, but, appropriate authorizations in place. And then ultimately, once the project is maybe coming to an end of a phase, I want to be able to take the information that we've gathered as part of that project and be able to hand that over into operations as well. So moving from the project network more into the asset network. And that is an area of focus for us as well. So, using standards like, CFOS to be able to, move from the build into operations and maintenance. So I just want to touch quickly on some of the solution innovations. So some of the new things, new capabilities. So there's a lot of work going on around, particularly around the user experience. And you would have seen actually even just in some of the screenshots that I've shared, some of them are Fiori, and there's still some of the WebDimpro screens. So a lot of work going in to increase the Fiori content, so make this available, more broadly across all of the different roles. This obviously helps then, in freeing people from desktops, and they can actually access all of this content on tablets and on phones as well. There's work going into also the core data systems views, so the underlying data views that we have in HANA, to be able to expose this data out for analytics purposes as well. So trying to harmonize the UI, but also trying to make that data available for analytics as well. So a lot of work going on in that space. So just some examples of the different different sort of Fiori reports, so cost reports that are available, the procurement reports that are available now as part of the latest releases. The other area, so slowly looking to get rid of all of the Java capabilities that are in SAP software across the board, and moving that all again to UI5. So new Fiori apps here as well, taking advantage of UI5 Gantt technology. So being able to visualize your project schedule, move things around, create dependencies, all of that sort of stuff in Fiori apps also. One of the other areas that has been a bit of a focus, and I mentioned sort of in commercial project management, we had a bit of a focus on issues and changes and risks. We're actually starting to bring that together now with portfolio and project management as well. So new risk management capabilities in here as well. So a risk register for being able to capture those details, being able to version that, being able to put in place calculations and scores. And improving that integration that we had between the functionality that previously was in commercial project management, making that available for portfolio management scenarios as well. Mustafa, was there anything you wanted to comment on this one? I know this is an area you're particularly interested in.
Yeah, I think this was one of the areas that were most desired in the portfolio management area. So having that link to the risk register from within the portfolio item, and also this can be also accessed through the PPM projects as well. And having access to the risk register is a great improvement here, and it's good to see that the whole solution coming together, and we are able to actually access different components from different parts to meet the same requirement of like as simple as having a risk register.
Yeah, no, perfect. There's more Fiori apps as well coming in the core S/4HANA project system also, and more CDS views to support analytics here as well. So across the board, across both enterprise portfolio and project management and S4, of course, we're seeing that use of the web-based UI being a real focus for us. There's a lot more planned. A lot of this functionality, if anyone was with us for the Intelligent Asset Management Innovation session last week, you know, a lot of this functionality goes into the cloud, right? So delivered in quarterly releases into the cloud, and then gets packaged up and delivered into the on-premise release, typically in that kind of annual cycle. So the roadmap is available here. Just a couple of call outs. So there was a question earlier, hey, can I bring external data into you know, portfolio and project management? And so there's a lot of work actually going on around making that extensibility much easier, so that we can actually expand the data that we represent there and let it flow through the whole project process. We've got more work that we're doing around Fiori, around projects and Gantt, modernizing the way that we deal. So if anyone's currently using portfolio and project management, some challenges around, you know, project system text. We've got a little bit of an old-fashioned way, traditional SAP way, you might call it, of doing some of this. You know, so modernizing that and making it a bit easier to attach and bring those notes in. And there's a number of others. There's many innovations that are coming in this space, but probably in the interest of time, I might just move through some of these. All right. So we wanted to talk about a couple of customer examples, and we've tried to pick them from a few different industries, and some are global and some are local. But you know, there's a number of different benefits, I guess, that customers are getting from these solutions. You know, whether it's, you know, better reporting or lower costs in terms of setting up projects and making decisions and making it easier to allocate resources. But really wanted to look at a couple of examples, you know, specifically in the capital projects sort of space. So the first one, Valero, so this is an oil and gas example, fairly large customer. And so they actually are using, you know, portfolio and project management for managing their capital and their IT projects. And really for them, it was around trying to standardize the process, trying to have a consistent platform, a consistent way of doing it, because, you know, they have a number of different refineries that all had, you know, different projects going on, all being documented in different ways, different approval systems. And so they really just wanted a consistent way so they could actually see across the board and actually make decisions, not just at an individual refinery level, but actually at an enterprise level. And so they've managed to achieve this and get that standard model, consistent way, consistent set of standards, and able to really improve, in their view, the way
that is to you.
Their capital budgets. So the next example is a utilities example. So this comes from Austria with Wien Energy. So they supply electricity, natural gas, heating solutions. So, you know, reasonable size utility, you know, a couple of billion euros in revenue here. And again, they struggled with this lack of visibility around their project portfolio. There was a lot of effort that they spent, you know, in that planning process and in that decision-making process. And a lot of it was paper-based for them. So they would pull this information together and they would go through different, you know, review cycles. But really no one had visibility of the overall picture. And so it meant, you know, it took them, you know, basically a full year to get the information together to make those investment decisions. And so really what they wanted to do was increase that visibility, reduce the time that it took. And, you know, they found that they were able to make really significant improvements, you know, reduce the time by about 30%, increase the visibility across the board. And that's made it much, you know, and in an industry like utilities where they're expanding into new markets, they're trialing, you know, new capabilities like, you know, EV and other initiatives. They really needed that visibility because they needed to be much more responsive, much more, you know, flexible and agile in terms of how they approached some of the initiatives that they were taking on. The third example, more a local example, I might ask Marty and Mustafa to talk about this one.
Okay, Sydney Trains. So Sydney Trains is one of the is operating one of the largest train networks, metropolitan train networks in Australia, and they have so many assets to look after and also to replace as they age. Their implementation included PPM across the other components in the EAM area. So we implemented PPM on top of a PS and PM solution that's also utilizing compatible units. The interesting part of this solution is utilizing compatible units for planning into PPM, because there is in these asset heavy industries, there's always the volumized planning of these replacing these aging assets, and compatible units actually tend to help us in that area, giving us the labor and material components that are required for a unit of a certain asset to be replaced. So planning compatible units are feeding into the portfolio items and buckets here in our implementation. And then we are using execution compatible units to deliver those projects throughout the year. At the end of the year, we are able to compare what were our planning compatible units and how we actually delivered them through work orders using execution compatible units. So this actually gives us a really good picture of standard unit rate analysis to make sure that our planning was actually correct or in line with what's happening on the field in terms of execution. Of course, there's a full-fledged BI solution implemented on top of this to do more deeper analysis of what has been happening in comparison to the portfolio level planning. There's integration with Primavera through EPC, and all this actually provides Sydney Trains with an accurate environment in terms of planning their portfolio and being able to compare the actuals against those unitized work buckets.
Perfect. Yeah, no, so I mean, obviously it's great to have these sort of local examples, and and as we've seen, I mean, across industries, whether it's oil and gas, utilities, or here travel and transportation, we see, I guess, a lot of similarities around the capital project planning process and execution process as well. So the last kind of section I wanted to talk a little bit about was just some of the the SAP and Rizing initiatives that that we're working on, some of the areas that that we're investing in, either separately or jointly in some cases. So Mustafa, maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of the work you're doing in this space.
Thank you. Okay, the first one that we would like to talk about is the Oracle P6 interface. So the challenges that organizations face around scheduling is some of it comes from the human resources. There are schedulers or there are project planners who are used to use a certain system, either Oracle P6 or Microsoft Project, and they would actually like to continue handling large project schedules with those systems. So there is a requirement to synchronize SAP work breakdown structures and activities to the schedules in P6. Since there are different types of projects handled in the organization, and each of them might have a different structure and different KPIs to be tracked, their schedules might be quite different, and integration between P6 and SAP needs to be tailored to be able to meet those different project structures. Not all of those projects are synchronized to the nth level smallest task. Sometimes we keep that integration at a higher level, and sometimes we go really down to the work order operation, network activity level integration. So that should be analyzed, and that's a challenge to get it right. And the final challenge is once you do the integration and get everything together, if organization has far too many projects that are happening at the same time, it might be a challenge for these interfaces to actually handle the volume of data in terms of time and performance, especially those overnight jobs that we hear about that that do not end in the morning and still keep running through into the day. So Rizing has a product called Carbon, and Carbon is used to synchronize project relevant data with P6. The data that we are looking at is project WBS structure, network activities, work orders and operations, milestones, relationships between network activities, and obviously financials relating to these objects. In terms of master data, we are able to send the work centers and employees as resources into P6 and keep them in sync. With Carbon, the end users have access to a Fiori screen, and through that Fiori screen, they are able to either schedule jobs to run regularly in the background, or they can trigger some of those jobs in an ad hoc manner. And this ad hoc trigger functionality through Fiori gives them access to, if they want to synchronize only one project because they have been working on it all day, they can easily trigger that. And they are also able to monitor progress and history of synchronizations through this Fiori screen. They are able to see, they are able to do an audit trail, tracking who transferred and which data at what time. And this gives them a good visibility between how the synchronization is working, and also they can have easy access to any errors if they were encountered during the synchronization process. How Carbon works? So Carbon works on SAP HANA database, and it uses a technology called SDI, Smart Data Integration. It can work on an on-premise environment, or it can also work in the cloud. It would connect to the SAP system through the cloud connector. On the ECC SAP side, it can support any SAP version from ECC 4.7 onwards into S/4HANA versions. We deploy an ABAP package into that SAP environment of the client, which involves some SAP BAPIs to extract and also to write the data back. On the Oracle side, it can support on-premise or cloud implementations of Oracle, and this includes the latest versions as well. The SDI technology, I think, is the key to the success of Carbon, because it actually makes the transfer faster than usual. It's actually working at the database layer rather than the application level. The application level can provide bottlenecks in terms of performance of these synchronization jobs. And also, users can easily access the error logs and review them through DP agent monitors. So SDI technology is key to the success of the Carbon. We have a client in US, Technip FMC, which is an engineering company in the oil and gas industry, using Carbon at the moment to integrate P6 and SAP. And we are approaching the end of our build in Energy Queensland to integrate their Oracle environment with the SAP S/4HANA. In terms of licensing,
sorry, I'll just ask a question that's in the chat.
Sure.
Does that SDI technology and within Rizing Carbon, does it solve the locking issues that are commonly encountered with larger project structures?
Yeah, so it is not at the application layer, so we wouldn't have locking issues. And again, usually the transfer jobs are set up in the hours that you wouldn't lock the projects, but ad hoc triggers are really easy as well. And since it works at the database layer, locking issues would not be a problem.
Right.
Yeah, so Carbon is licensed in different ways as well. So you don't have to actually, buy the product. You can use it as a software as a service, or you can do a one-time license purchase, and then that would be an annual maintenance fee, and then you can keep using it like that, and that would actually bring you, similar to the software as a service, bring you the improvements in the product in the future. So that was the first one. The other one that I would like to mention is Rizing's codex system. It's a pre-configured EAM implementation that we use as our reference system. So we use it in all our new implementations. to accelerate the process. It includes industry taxonomy based on best practices and Rizing's experience in those industries. When you look into, equipment, function, location, project portfolio data in it, you see real life experience and data that's actually closer to that industry. It has end-to-end processes that we can bring to our demonstrations with the business. It has a pre-configured S/4HANA platform with many SAP applications integrated, and also on top of that, we have our Rizing enhancements and Rizing products working on that in the same box. So it's Rizing's experience all distilled down into this S/4HANA model to accelerate the process of adopting S/4HANA. Some of the examples in the PPM area. So there is, as I mentioned, there are processes in terms of PPM and PS. There is data like portfolio data for different industries. This includes portfolios, buckets, item examples. And when you go to individual screens, objects, there are custom fields created specifically for those industries to make it more useful for that industry. And typically these are requests that we get in every implementation. And the good thing about PPM is it's actually quite open and easily enhanced in these areas because it has so many enhancement points available. And the last one I would like to mention is maybe looking at portfolio items on a map would be a good idea. If you were looking to combine different investment options that are in the horizon, seeing them on the map could help with that activity. So you can start from the portfolio level and then switch to the map, or you can directly start in the SAP GEF and then do a lasso, see your portfolio items, and you can click one or multiple of them and then jump into the details of those portfolio items, or you can call up reports in SAP to see the plan actual comparison of those, so on and so forth. So that contextual menu can be tailored based on the requirements of the organization. Some clients would like to see capacity requirements, for example, and we then jump into the work center level information there.
For those who aren't familiar with the acronym GEF, that's the SAP Geographic Enablement Framework for basically being able to bring spatial data together with SAP data. If you're interested in that topic, join us on Thursday. We'll be deep diving into geospatial enablement of SAP.
Thanks, John.
No
and BI. So BI is important to bring all the data together coming from different modules, and Rizing has a good BI experience bringing PPM data together with the actuals, also including compatible units in certain implementations. This is a quite important area because it really brings out the value out of the product to be able to do these analysis, and that actually provide feedback into your planning process. If you are constantly using out of whack planning numbers, planning units, this is a good way of really finding out those outliers in your planning and then making sure that they are actually aligned to your actual implementation costs and efforts.
I think this is a challenging area for a lot of people, right? That you have information that's in your projects, you have information that's in your financials, that's in your procurement, that's in your asset management. Being able to bring all of that together, and really this is where an enterprise analytics tool, for example, SAP Analytics Cloud, that's able to bring information from all those different sources and display it in a kind of a cohesive sort of story is really powerful. So really, I mean, this is just some examples here, actually. And I mentioned in the innovations, there's actually been a lot of work done around the core data services. So actually exposing some of the data that we have inside project systems, inside portfolio and project management, exposing that in a way that it can be consumed in a tool like, and this example is Analytics Cloud with the Digital Boardroom, being able to consume that data and provide different visualizations, different representations that you can then drill down and interrogate as part of your analytics process. So the other area that I just wanted to touch on briefly is some of the work that SAP is doing locally here in Australia with the Asset Intensive Industries Centre of Excellence. So we're actually investing here locally, building a team that is globally endorsed and sponsored, but is working locally with our customers around particular challenges that we see in the market in the asset intensive space, so that we can actually understand what's needed, document that, and feed that back into our product development organization. So really, this COE is kind of spearheading the voice of the customer here in Australia and feeding that back into development. There are a number of projects that we're working on. Some stuff, if you just pop to the next one. So some of the areas that we're working, and we've spoken about some of these already. Actually, last week on Thursday, we spoke about the collaborative work and service that we're doing in the asset management space, and also some of the network GIS work that we're doing. We're also, doing some projects around intelligent supply chain for assets, or MRO, using integrated business planning, and also doing some work around the logistics network, particularly in track and trace. But the particular project I wanted to talk about here is this idea of digitized infrastructure. And so we're actually working the COE together with our public sector team, looking at how we can digitize infrastructure during the construction phase. And thinking about it from kind of three different perspectives, this idea of kind of the digital thread, so being able to bring information right from the start of a project and bring that all the way through into operations and maintenance and through to decommissioning. This idea of the in-dimensional digital twin, so not just 3D or 4D, but actually any number of dimensions, and being able to represent those and make that information available, and then extending that then through into collaboration. So so I gather all the information as part of my digital thread, I connect it together in my multiple dimensions digital twin, and then I share that information with all of the different stakeholders. So there's a lot more information on all of this, around all of the different processes we're going through. Maybe we'll just skip through this, Mustafa, but the different ways that we can represent information, the way that we can do the collaboration. There is a lot more information available here, and if anyone would like some more detail on this, please reach out. I would be very happy to talk about some of the initiatives that we're doing. As I mentioned, this is primarily focused on public sector just to start with, just given some of the capital investment that they're making and some of the challenges they have around the large scale infrastructure projects that they do. But actually a lot of the principles that we're working through here and the partners we're working through here apply equally in other large scale asset intensive industries like mining and oil and gas as well. So yeah, if you're interested to know a little bit more about that, please feel free to reach out.
Thanks, John.
Great. Well, thank you very much, John and Mustafa. Really, really interesting insight into what's currently available in EPPM, but just as excitingly, what's coming up and what is being focused on the roadmap. There are a couple of questions. We do have a couple of minutes left, so I might just read them out if that's okay. a question regarding reporting. What sits behind SAC, SAP Analytics Cloud in S4HANA, to bring the data together? Is there any work being done on SAP BW data cubes to support the EPPM reporting?
So there is at the kind of the S4HANA level, there is integration. So when I create a portfolio item and then that generates into a project, right? Those two things are linked. So actually then when you expand that project into its WBSs and, maybe you start, recording time and procuring and things like that, all of that information sort of flows back up again. And so this is, you might use project systems, for example, in S4 to gather that operational data, but it actually then flows up into an operational project and then up into a portfolio item and then ultimately up into those buckets in enterprise portfolio and project management. So they are all linked together. That is actually part of one of the benefits, I guess, of using SAP for this, is that all of those pieces all fit together. And so when you come to apply analytics and you use, for example, those core data services, those CDS views, actually those links are still there. So you're able to then go all the way from, a portfolio bucket, drill all the way down to all the projects, then down to the actual, work breakdown structure. And actually, if you want to keep going all the way down to the individual transactions, whether it's a timesheet or whether it's a purchase order or an invoice, so you actually have that linkage from top to bottom. Now, there's more work that we have to do in that space around those core data views, but we've started that, and customers also, if you're extending and using that extensibility, you can extend those as well to include, for example, custom fields and other data that you might be bringing from other sources. So yeah, there's a good foundation. It's certainly extensible, but there's definitely more work that SAP has to do in that space as well.
Yeah, as CDS views become available in the PPM/PS area more, they might actually change the way we implement the modules a little bit going forward, because we sometimes try to get everything right in that integration layer between PS and PPM. As we are rolling up the data, we try to build in sometimes too much transformation of the data into that integration, into that layer. As the CDS views become available, maybe some of those tasks might actually move to the reporting area, which can easily be done through CDS relationships, rather than actually, keeping that roll-up program really busy. We might actually move some of those things into the reporting layer, onto the CDS view relationships that are consumed by an environment like SAC, which is really good to visualize the data as well.
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, we might leave it there. We're bang on time. There was one more question regarding a customer reference. Rakesh, we might get back to you directly regarding that one. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Again, really insightful session, and specifically to Mustafa and John, thank you. Please join us on Thursday for our session on geospatial integration with SAP. As you can see, that's on Thursday the 19th, the 6th of 8 sessions, and we're getting through them and really enjoying your feedback and your questions. So please join us on Thursday for the next one.
We did have a couple of questions around reporting and analytics as well, so I might just point out next Tuesday a whole session dedicated specifically to that topic as well. So if you want to dive a bit deeper into asset management reporting and analytics, then join us next week as well.
Set aside plenty of room for questions.
I think there will be lots.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Fantastic.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.